years of my life, I think. I'm also a volunteer chaplain with York Regional Police, and I'm a United Church minister, and a member here in Aurora. I was actually raised in this church, baptized, and my children, who are no longer children, and off doing their own thing, are the 5th generation of my family here.
Wow.
Which is, that's really cool. Been around for a long time. So, thank you very much for inviting me to share the Labyrinth. This is one of my passions, and I actually offer it at the hospital once a month. So if you're there, hopefully you don't have to go there, but Carol sees the posters, I'm sure, around all the time. Once a month I have it at the hospital. And again, anybody can come. So I have patients walking it with IV poles. I have patients who come and are unable to walk and use my finger tool labyrinth, which is the same pattern of the labyrinth that you're going to see in the narthex. So people will sit in their wheelchairs, and I sit them up at a table and they sit with the finger tool. One of my members, volunteers at the Hospital for Spiritual Care, is Buddhist, and she comes most often when she's able and brings her Tibetan singing bowls, and they are magnificent. And she plays her bowls as we're walking. It's really spectacular. It's worth coming, maybe, just to walk it and to hear the bowls. So I'm thrilled to be here. Your names again are?
I'm Steve.
Steve.
Patty.
Patty.
Brent.
Brett.
And Frida.
Have you walked the labyrinth before?
Yes.
Okay, everybody has? Okay, good.
Once. Just once.
Once, that's okay. Often at the hospital, it's people's first time, so it's a very, an introduction to it, you know, as we start. So some of this may sound a little bit repetitive, but what I'm hoping to do tonight, if I understand my purpose in being here, is to share with you about the labyrinth, so that if there's an opportunity that you want to gather a group, that you would be able to facilitate and help people, perhaps answering some of their questions or their concerns, or what's this really about, and to give you a very basic 101 course in the labyrinth in just a short time. I always believe that giving people the opportunity to walk the labyrinth is the most important piece. So at the hospital, I give a very brief introduction, and then I allow them to walk it, and then I give them a flyer, a little brochure that I make up, and I give it to them after, so that they do have that opportunity to walk and have that experience. So as we begin, I think to understand actually what the labyrinth is, which is a meditation tool. It's a spiritual tool, okay? Often called a path of prayer for all people, meaning that anyone and everyone is welcome to walk the labyrinth, regardless of spirituality or faith tradition or religious background. The labyrinth is open to everyone, which again at the hospital makes it perfect in that very diverse setting. So when people are coming to the labyrinth with their beliefs and their faith system, that's fine. You know, they're bringing that to it. But there's also that wonderful openness about it, and it's very universal. So it can speak to people wherever they're coming from, I believe, which is part of its very gentle and loving power. So a path of prayer for all people. And in one of my little books that I brought along this evening, it's called Prayer Walking. And the author describes walking the labyrinth as taking a stroll with your soul. And I really like that. I think that's a wonderful way to sum it up as a means of meditation. And we all know that there's different ways to meditate, right? Guided meditation or silence. People meditate when they're sitting on their dock and toes are in the water, right? Different positions for meditation, keeping our palms open and allowing the energy to flow through us. So lots of breathing exercises that are a form of meditation. So the labyrinth is one of those. It's a tool. And I believe that part of our task or our in our spiritual journey is to discover what spiritual tools work for us. We're all individuals, and one thing will work best for one, and another tool for something else. So the labyrinth works great for some people. Others, it's not their favorite, but maybe something else is. Okay? I was first introduced to the labyrinth actually here at Aurora United when Anne brought it here back, I think that was probably about 1996, 97 maybe. And I went to Grace Cathedral. Anne went in November, I went in February, and studied with Lauren Artris, who's the author of Walking the Sacred Path, which is the book. And she taught both Anne and myself at different times. So it was a week-long course. Flew to San Francisco, and off I went and was immersed in the labyrinth for those days, and it was amazing. I understand now that Lauren travels all over the world, and she even comes to Toronto sometimes and offers workshops there. So it might be a possibility, if you're really keen, to check the website and at Grace Cathedral and just see where she is. There are 2 labyrinths at Grace Cathedral where we studied. I have pictures, photos of them. There's a woven floor labyrinth inside the sanctuary of the cathedral. And it's absolutely magnificent. And it's actually right next to the baptismal font. So, right center, front and center in the church. It's beautiful. You can look at the pictures after. There's also a beautiful terrazzo labyrinth outdoors, which is fabulous. And it's right outside the front doors of the cathedral. So, wonderful. When I went to San Francisco, we took an excursion to California Pacific Hospital, and we walked the labyrinth there, which is right outside the emergency department of the hospital. So again, people were walking with their IV poles, people that were anxious and waiting, they were walking the labyrinth, and it was really wonderful. So I hope that tonight in our time together that you'll be able to glimpse some of the mystery of it, which I think is absolutely amazing. The mystery of it, its gentle power, its loving power, and just be able to soak some of that in this evening. Lauren Artris says that she hopes that we will all sprinkle the earth with that labyrinth. So hopefully that's what we're helping to do as we gather. So how I'd like to move through is to give an introduction to it, some of the symbolism, the history of it, just briefly. And then what we'll do is give you the opportunity to walk, and then we'll come back, if that's okay. Just okay. So beginning a little bit about it, when we think about prayer tools or meditation tools, that I mentioned some already, can you give me some idea of what you do? What is your prayer practice? Or do you have something that works for you that you find is helpful? There's lots out there.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Present moment. Good. Is that part of breathing?
Yes.
Perhaps? Okay.
Yes. And feeling what's inside and
Good.
knowing what's going on inside.
Good. I believe that the labyrinth calls that out of us, because we are walking one foot ahead of the other, hopefully clearing our mind of all the busyness of the day and you might have rushed to get here, all of those kinds of things. And for me, putting one foot ahead of the other helps with mindfulness to keep me in the present moment of just moving and trusting the path and being present. Yeah, excellent, good.
I do cooking meditation, walking meditation, and sitting meditation. Not, well, certainly cooking
Yeah,
every day, but
good.
sitting not every day,
Yeah,
but certainly sometimes it's just the right thing to do. I don't
Yeah.
kind of consciously decide I'm going to meditate, but and in the morning, you know, just
yeah.
as my day starts, just I
Wonderful.
need to sit for a while, and on my walks too.
Great. Connect with spirit and creation and
Yeah.
your own inner
Mm-hmm.
essence. Good. Good.
And I do a guided meditation, try to do it each morning. It's Deepak Chopra
Good.
one, and I find that that's very centering.
Maybe sets the tone for your day.
It does, and when I start neglecting it, I'm quite aware in my body, in my spirit, that something's being neglected. So
Excellent. Good.
For me, just finding a quiet moment, which is very difficult. I like to light a candle at the same time and kind of focus on the candle. Try my best to clear my mind, which is difficult at the best of times. Other times it can be just spa-like music that I can sit and listen to when I may be knitting or doing something, with my hands. But I find I can get quiet, contemplative time
Good.
doing that.
For me, it's being outdoors, sitting on a log or a nice piece of wood, hands palm open, breathing abdominally, and visualizing warm energy flowing through the top of my head. And that's a very meditative thing for me.
Excellent. Very good. Wow. We're surrounded this evening, or just behind me, by these beautiful shrubs. So I think of rosaries that people use as they recite prayers, or mantras that people say, and recite familiar prayers that we know and that perhaps we learned when we were children, and just say those over. I have a beautiful Buddhist prayer bowl that sometimes I use too with the labyrinth, although I left it at the hospital. Candle lighting, you mentioned. Sometimes reading scripture, of course, walking in nature, like you said. Sometimes journaling. Journaling is one of my tools. That's one that I use a lot. When I need to quiet myself, I light the candle and maybe put music on, and I sit with my journal and I write my prayers on it. I think for me it helps because it keeps me focused a little bit. The labyrinth works better for me than sitting in silence and trying to empty my mind. There's something about this that works. Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that the labyrinth is a path of prayer for all people, and I certainly have had people of various faith traditions walk it, which is amazing. It really is amazing to see people come and be open to the labyrinth. It's been found in all religious traditions in history. We can trace it back to the Egyptians, Aztecs, native people. It may be a different form of the one that we're walking tonight, which is the sharp one from France. But in some form, it's found in all faith traditions, which is pretty spectacular. I'll share a quick story about when I had it years ago down at York Central Hospital. They asked me to take my labyrinth there for Spiritual Care Awareness Week. And I took it there, and I had a Muslim gentleman walk it. And he had never walked it before, and he said, I'm really curious about this. And I just told him a little bit about it. and he walked it, and when he got to the center, he knelt down and prayed as he would. And he said and he spent quite a bit of time in the center. And he was by himself, and when he came off, he said, I don't know what this thing is, but it's very powerful. Because in the center of it, I had the same feeling that I did when I did a pilgrimage to Mecca. So I'm getting truth bumps.
Yeah.
I had a Zoroastrian, that's a very ancient tradition prior to Christianity. A gentleman come and walk that same day, and he asked me what the lunations are, and we'll get to that, but these little circles, they look like little half moons all around the outside. And I said, oh, what do you think they are? And he said, oh, they're all the people of the world. And if I'd answered, I would have said, well, it's in quadrants, and it's actually lunations, meaning the moon, the cycles of the moon, right, around the outside. But that was his impression of it, or his feeling of it, was it's all the people of the world in a circle around. So, yeah, pretty powerful. Walking the Labyrinth is also, I believe, a form of body prayer. If we think of, sometimes I know in church we do body prayers with some of the songs, right? That Christ before me, and that one where we move, and our hands and our feet and our bodies are moving. The labyrinth is like that too. It involves the whole of our being. Labyrinths are popping up everywhere. They're in hospitals, they're in parks, they're in prisons, they're certainly in churches. Timothy, in Toronto, they have a big one. It's a beautiful one in the city. So people are learning in all aspects of life that this is a tool that's available. There's a beautiful one up in Roach's Point. It's at I forget the name of it, Carol, but it's a convent. And they have a beautiful outdoor one, and there's a big tree growing right up through the center. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. I've used the labyrinth. I've been invited to use the labyrinth with various groups, sometimes grief groups, sometimes for stress, sometimes for relaxation. Before Christmas, I actually had an evening I spent with the York Region Homicide Support Group. And I took my labyrinth and spent an evening with them. So I think people are learning about it. And so I'm going to give you a handout. And what I like to do is just not taking too long, but to go through some of the symbolism, and some of this it might be easier if you're actually looking at it and trying to concentrate on
Do you have another one, Vicki?
what I'm saying.
Oh, thank you.
So that first page is just an introduction. It does have my home number on there in case you have any questions or things that you're wondering about afterwards. That first page, as you turn over, this is a copy, and I know Carol has a copy of it. This is the Labyrinth of Path to Peace that was in Being Well at South Lake. That's their foundation magazine, and a while ago it was in there. It was probably over a year ago anyway. It was in there, and it talks about the labyrinth. And because it was in there, we did get a lot of people to come to the hospital to walk it. So as we move to Welcome to the Labyrinth, I have there, of course, that it's a walking prayer, meditation, and path of prayer. An archetype is the word that we often use for a tool like this that is universal. It's found, as I said, in all religious traditions in the world. The labyrinth that we're using this evening is the one that's the Chart labyrinth, which, as it says here, was brought from France to North America by Lauren Artres, and the Chart Cathedral labyrinth was built in 1220. And it says there that people used to go to their church or their cathedral and walk the labyrinth as part of their worship and their meditation, as a form of pilgrimage during times when they may have wanted to journey to Jerusalem, but it was very dangerous to travel and so on. So they would go to their church and they would walk the labyrinth as a form of prayer and pilgrimage. Some people will look at the labyrinth and see a pattern to it, that movement of walking into the labyrinth, bringing all that you have and that you are on that day, particular day, into the center of the labyrinth, which we call the holy or the divine, God, source of life, whatever word you want to use, and spending as much time as you want there, hopefully replenishing yourself a little bit with the light and so on, and then journeying back out, same path in as out, but usually quite different. Some people's pace changes as they start walking in. They'll find that their pace is different from going in and going out. I don't want to set you up for anything, but often slower coming out because it has quieted them as they walk. Yeah. People often say that the labyrinth, there's something about it that allows them to feel comfortable and safe in feeling what they're feeling. And don't be surprised if people, tears come. Okay, they feel, so I always make sure I have a Kleenex box right there at the entrance for people to take in, just a little thing to remember. As people are about to enter the labyrinth, I often ask them if they have a concern or a worry or something they want to pray about, that they're seeking discernment or direction or healing or just a feeling of calm and peace, to take that in there with them. Say that prayer as they enter, and then sometimes people will say quietly to themselves a word to help them to focus or to be quiet and to enter in, just to open to hear what the divine is telling them. If you flip over to imagery of the labyrinth, this is quite fascinating. In the center of it, there is, looks like a flower. It's a rosette, it's called. And in Chart Cathedral, there is an identical rosette, and actually the rosettes are quite common in Christian furniture and things that we have around, like on baptismal fonts and so on. In in Chart Cathedral, the labyrinth is on the floor, and right above it is the rosette. It's the same as that, same size, identical. And if you were to take that rosette and that stained glass window and move it onto the floor, right down, it would fit exactly. Yeah. For Christians, it's a symbol of the Virgin Mary, the rosette. It's also a symbol, the Rose of Sharon. We've heard that talked about. The rose, also a sign of beauty and of love, and dates back to the Egyptian myths of Isis and Aphrodite and Venus of classical times. The simple rose became a symbol of acceptance of God's love for the world. again, perfect for the labyrinth. In the mystical tradition, the rose was the symbol of the Holy Spirit. So there we are, right in the middle of the labyrinth. The 6 petals, this is also very interesting, because people do ask that. Funny, do the petals mean anything? And if you're starting from this side, it's the 6 days of creation as well. So we're thinking of creation. For Christians, again, the 6 petals represent the sun. The sun, as in Jesus, the sun. And the 6 petals also represent the 6 stages of planetary evolution. So if we start over here, it's mineral, vegetable, animal, human, angelic, and divine. And people will tell me often, without having known that they're really drawn to one petal. I actually find it's not as common that people will go to the center and stand right in the center. They're usually drawn for some reason to one of the petals. So they may ask you about that. The purple on the canvas at the turns, labyrinths, they represent women's creativity and also form a large cross. So if we're looking at it from the Christian tradition, then we're going to see the large cross right through the. The path that we're walking tonight is the 11th circuit labyrinth, which means that you're walking around the center 11 times. And this is a little bit smaller version because it's 24 feet across, and I had them make it just a wee bit smaller so it would fit more places, which was very good, a very good idea. Any questions about it so far? Anything that you have seen that you're wondering that I haven't answered?
Okay, so for the 6 petals, so if someone is naturally drawn to, say, mineral, for example, does that represent some sort of energy imbalance in them that they're getting punished by the mineral petal?
Lauren would say that. She would say there's a reason that the person is drawn to that. I would direct them to the book if they're really curious about it, rather than try and speculate what that might be for someone. I would direct them to the book. And then they can read a little bit more about it, and they will be able to figure out why perhaps they were drawn to that one, rather than try and guess.
What's your knowledge of the background of study that she did in order to write the book?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
Obviously,
I know she did a lot
lots
of
and
research.
lots of
Yeah,
research.
I know she did a lot.
Traveled.
And she really, truly is the one who sort of resurrected the labyrinth here in North America years ago. She brought it over, and she's the one that started workshops and talking about it, and she traveled North America with her labyrinth, like I have tonight, in her suitcase, and traveled all over to introduce people to it. She really believed in it. That's a good question. Lauren is an Episcopal priest, which is a form of the Anglican Church, I believe.
Is there any linkages, like pre-Christianity, like to more sort of spirituality and religious beliefs practiced by more nature? I think of like Wiccan stuff, but not just that, but any particular indigenous and nomadic or just people of the earth.
Well, we can trace it back to the Egyptians, for sure.
Okay.
But we also can see it in the Aztecs and Native people, for sure, with their walks, their pilgrimages, their dances, everything to do with the circle.
Okay.
So, and there's books that have pictures. This blue one that I have is really good. It has a lot of pictures of very ancient labyrinths that look different than the one that we're walking this evening, but the premise being the same, which is fascinating.
had any people, and pardon the term, I'll just call them humbugs, come and have a completely different experience going in versus coming out? Like going in, you know, contrary to believing, and coming out and having a change of heart.
I've had people go in quite anxious and worried and come off the labyrinth feeling calmer and more peaceful. I've had people call me a couple of days later and said, since I walked the labyrinth, I have felt different, and I'm getting messages in my dreams. And so Lauren would tell you this also, that the labyrinth, the energy of it works within you after you've walked it. So when you go home tonight, maybe the next day, if you had a question that you went in with, it might not come this evening, the answer, but it may in the next few days. I also suggest to people that they not go in with expectations, because I want them just to be open to the experience and trust the path and believe that whatever is happening for them in that moment is meant to happen. So every time we walk the labyrinth, it's going to be different because of what we're bringing to it that day, how we're feeling that day, what concerns we have, all kinds of things. If we're distracted, if we're having trouble focusing, being present to it. People enjoy the music, so I would suggest that you always have music very soft in the background. It calms people as well. Certain places that you may have it, you can't use real candles, so like the hospital. So I have the little tea lights, they're battery operated, things like that, that will help to create the space for you. So if you're taking it out of the church or out of the narthex, or you're using it downstairs in the social hall, you can easily transform that space for the labyrinth. Just with the music and the lights even.
It's better to have real candles if possible.
I'm so used to using tea lights now that I don't really notice. It's more work probably. But, you know, they actually work fine. And when they're in the little bowls as you're walking around, you tell me when you see it in there, it's lovely. Yeah. Some of the benefits, people will say, well, why are we doing this? Most of all, a sense of peace, I would say. Time to ask yourself, you know, what do I need? What am I seeking? People lose track of time, usually. Unhurried space. Sometimes a deep state of concentration. People get in touch with their emotions sometimes as things are stirred up for them. Sometimes they see, it's an insight into things. Some find healing in different ways. Often it's taking care of self that happens too, right? You may want to journal following your labyrinth. Sometimes walk. Sometimes people want to sit and write a few notes after. Very gracious and forgiving. The last page, and then we'll go and let you walk. These are just some pointers that I think are good to remember. There's no right way to walk the labyrinth. I mean, you're going to walk in to the center and back out again. People confuse it often with a maze. It's not a maze. There's no walls. And really, you can't get lost. If you step off the path, you're either going to end up back at the beginning, start over, or back in the center. And I think it was the third time that I walked the labyrinth here that I actually stepped off the path to let someone pass, and I ended up back in the center. Now, Lauren would say that whatever happens to you on that labyrinth that day was meant to happen. And it's a metaphor for what's happening in your life in that moment. So I can look back at that and say, I was probably rushing. I probably didn't spend as much time as I really needed in the center, which could be a message, you know, for my spiritual life, or I needed to take more time for spirit, or for taking care of my spiritual life. So I ended up back in the center, and then I just followed it out again. Beware of expectations. I mentioned that. Don't miss the experience. So try not to set yourself up for, as Lauren says, to have a profound religious or spiritual experience. You will still have some encounter with the divine, which may simply be translated into feelings of deep peace. This is an important point, especially for people who haven't walked the labyrinth before, that it's one path in and the same path back out. So you're going to meet people on the path. So we just, you know, gently step aside one person and let people pass. It's important to discover and honor your own pace, which may change throughout your walk. Follow the pace your body wants to go. If there's someone ahead of you who is going much slower than you would like to go, you might take that as a message to slow down a little bit. Or if it's really frustrating you, then be mindful of that, and if you need to, step around and keep going. I think that's more valuable than walking behind someone who's walking more slowly and being really frustrated and missing out. Take the time you need to prepare yourself before you walk the labyrinth. So I encourage people at the hospital to do that. Sometimes they're coming and they're just on a break, so they don't have too long, but they want to be able to have the opportunity to walk. So I invite them just to sit for a moment, take their shoes off, and just take a few breaths before they start. I ask people to remove their shoes if they're able. You'll be more grounded. It also helps to keep my canvas clean. And you'll feel more steady, I think, for most people, unless, of course, you have to wear your... I mentioned about not getting lost, really. You'll end up back at the beginning or back in the center. Sometimes people their walk ends, and they think, oh my gosh, how did I get to the end so quickly? And I invite them just to walk around the edge. Sometimes walking this circle around the lunations helps them just to feel more complete about it. So just a thought. It's helpful to sit quietly following your labyrinth walk. You may want to sit and even make a note of your thoughts or feelings or any images or insights that came to you.
I noticed that when Peter is walking it or helping with it, he walks around the outside.
Afterwards, you have mentioned about sitting quietly. Is there, in your experience, an interest by people to talk about it? What kind of level of interest?
It's always an invitation.
Okay.
First of all, to speak. When I do a workshop and people gathering as a group after their walk, I always invite them to share if they wish. Sometimes it's too personal and they don't want to, and that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes people would just prefer to sit quietly in the sanctuary. I remember that happening here. Just sit quietly with their journal and just make some, and just reflect that way. sometimes people's feelings are just too personal, and they want to keep that to themselves, and that's okay. We respect.
When I was first introduced to it, they had a book at the entrance or where you went out, and people would write the comments in it.
Yeah.
But I haven't noticed that of late.
Okay. I do have one,
Do you?
but I would say probably only about 20% of people sign it. And again, it could be just because, I forget to mention it, or people's thoughts and feelings, they just
Too personal.
Any other questions that you'd like to ask me before you walk?
Are there any thoughts to think about just before you go in, before you start? Kind of as a preparation.
As a preparation, I would say or suggest, like your mindfulness to sort of empty out, the busyness of the day and things that have gone on, or things that are the chatter in your mind, to try and quiet that a little bit. And I think my prayer for you would be to be open to the divine, to the Spirit, to guide you and to give you what you need in this moment. Okay? Yes, that would probably be my prayer. I think we're ready. Certainly, she talks about all different labyrinths, but she talks about the sharp one, which is the one that we have. So, they have a newer version of it now. It's a white cover now, rather than black. So,
In your experience, have people had, let's say, comparable, like just as many experiences using the finger labyrinth as walking?
Yeah, it just depends if that's what they choose. Mostly people will walk if they can.
If they can.
But if they're not able, then they'll, I had a patient one time, a heart patient, cardiology patient, and she came to walk it. And at first, when she said she wanted to come, I thought she was going to sit and do this, the finger tool, because she was only, getting to the end of the hall and back, right? And it's a fair walk around. And so I was a little bit concerned. I thought, oh, she said, oh no, I want to walk. And she came with her mom and her sister. And she walked every step of the way, and she never even flinched. It was amazing. Nobody could believe that she did it. But she loved it. So every time I had it, she came back. I had one patient who'd broken her leg in about 4 places, and she came and sat with the finger tool. And finally, the staff came and got her and said, you have to come for physio now. She didn't want to leave. She was there for almost the whole 2.5 hours, which is usually how long I have her there.
I like what you said earlier about it operating at kind of subtler levels that are not necessarily you know, part of your conscious interpretations. You know, it's more, it's much more inner than that. So even while you might make up nice little stories about stuff which would be maybe quite helpful, the walking and the well, it's hard to describe because it's more of that subtler stuff where you're kind of,
It's much deeper.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, you don't quite know how to talk about it.
Sometimes people, that would be a reason for not saying a whole lot after. They just can't find the words. You know, like so many things. That's why we have rituals and why we have different sacraments and things in the church, because words sometimes aren't enough. We can't find the right words, so we sing about it and music,
Yeah, and yet I think some of the things that we talk about is the importance of sharing and talking about those kinds of experiences that you have every day, but often are not given time to talk about.
Right.
So sort of a balance, I suppose, between that.
Yeah. It can be an opening for conversation
Sure.
too. It can be the flip side of that, where someone has experienced something on the labyrinth, and if they feel safe in the group that they're in, they may share it and want people's to hear people's feelings about it.
Sure, if lots of feelings are gurgling up inside you, nothing better
That's right.
than giving it life by talking.
And trust the feelings. You know, we talk about feelings, we talk about thoughts, and that's what I do a lot in my work at the hospital, because I'm at the bedside mostly. And so when I go into a patient's room, I'm always wanting to discern what they're feeling. I never walk in and say, what are you thinking, or how are you doing? I always ask, how are you feeling? Because I want them to move it from their head to their heart, so that they're speaking about what this experience is for them in the hospital.
They have to acknowledge.
And there's spiritual issues, for sure, right? Loss of purpose, loss of meaning, loss of life as one knew it, loss of home, loss of health, grieving. Yeah, it's huge, huge. Sometimes people are surprised by the emotion that they feel. When years ago here with the labyrinth, we had children that walked it, but they didn't always walk. They danced and they went backwards, and it was a delightful, delightful.
They had it open one New Year's Eve, and my granddaughters were about 4 and 2, and I brought them, and they did just that. They had a great time just walking around.
Yeah,
and
they danced,
enjoying
they
it.
crawled,
Yeah.
they
They did whatever they could.
It's wonderful. Do you remember Anne's dog?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the labyrinth was out, it would go. It was in the office here with her. And when the labyrinth was out, it would go and always laid in the middle.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
So the dog felt the energies.
Always laid in the middle. Impressions about it. Would you feel comfortable if you were asked to, just guide people or support people as they walk it? Yeah. I think one of the things would be try not to rush people, give them the time that they need. one of the things I forgot was to close the doors before we got out. Well, I tried to do it, you know, when we got out of there, because the noise. So be mindful of what's going on around you. And the floor was uneven because of the mats under there, and I forgot to mention that. So that would be something, you know, to just so people are mindful about it, if they're, because they might feel unsteady because it's not quite level in places, and that was something I missed tonight. I needed to tell you that that wasn't going to be a smooth surface.
That was telling me to find more balance in my life.
Yeah, could be that. You probably all discovered that then.
Well, I was tippy a few times, you know.
Yeah.
With my,
Yeah, so that would be something. And if you are offering it downstairs and not here, then it's going to be on carpet, right? Which is a different feel again. And sometimes on carpet it'll slide a wee bit. Not always, but this one's pretty good. They've really done a good job on this one. But I remember the other one, I think it did slide a bit on carpet. Because I took it down to Sunnybrook one time.
It's
Like the Aurora one. And I took it to Sunnybrook and we had it on carpet and it was sliding and people were, it was
I know
crinkling.
Colleen is very conscious of when people ask for it to say, do you have carpet? Because
Yeah.
it does slide.
Now this one, because I have it on carpet all the time, it's so funny, and it's okay. It could
So
just be the
material's canvas as opposed to...
It's a very special canvas that they use and a very special paint so that it doesn't crack, so that I can actually fold it up and drag it around in that suitcase.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a company that makes them for Grace Cathedral. So I actually ordered it through there.
Right.
do you ever have anybody who just perhaps ignores your, I didn't hear it as a rule, but like to remove your shoes and walk it? Would people sometimes ignore that and say, no, I got shoes?
I think I've had the odd person who needed to leave their shoes on for support, you know, what do they call it? Orthotics?
Yeah,
That they have to wear their shoe, and I just say,
of course, yeah.
of course. But I haven't had anybody refuse.
Mm-hmm.
People are usually
Sensitive and respectful.
just
right?
respectful of it.
I would think.
That's the first time I walked it in my bare feet,
Oh, okay.
and I really thought that was so much more connected to the.
Yeah,
I like them.
good. Good.
So if we were to have a group of people on a day to have a labyrinth walk, would you suggest we, like, even taking some of your material, Vicki, and perhaps abbreviate it to give an introduction, to give a context that's very helpful?
I would give, if you're going to do sort of a little workshop and have people, you know, what we did tonight, kind of, you could shorten that down a little bit and do it. If it's an open walk, then, like I have at the hospital, then you're kind of doing it as people arrive. And sometimes it's just a very brief introduction. You know, this is a walking prayer, a walking meditation. Please remove your shoes. Point to them where they start. You know, invite them to take, say a prayer, whatever, as they enter. Ask them to take their time. You know, those kinds of things, sort of the fundamentals of there's one path in, one path out, right? And a woman one time at the hospital, I had stepped out of the room and I had a volunteer there, and not to criticize her at all, but she forgot to tell the person that you need to walk back out the same way you went in. So she got to the center, and then she was leaving the center and she just walked right off. So people don't always know.
The center's not the
You need to
end.
follow it. The center's not the end. You need to follow it back. It's like Jesus on top of the mountain. You need to make your way back down the mountain, back out into the world.
Most of the walks here are open walks.
Okay.
Like we had one on Ash Wednesday,
Yes.
Oh, great.
and it was after the in meditation, and
Yeah.
so there wasn't an opportunity. There seldom is an opportunity to
Yeah.
really guide them.
Yeah.
But we printed up a little handout
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and put some things in the fountain.
Actually, I should have brought it for you tonight. I don't have one here. I have a condensed version of that, and it folds this way,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of a miniature of this
Yeah.
with not as much detail. Actually, when you're in the hospital
I'll
next time,
pick one
just
up,
stop by.
Yes, thank
And
you.
I'll,
That would
I'll
be
give you,
great.
and you're more than welcome to take. I mean, really, this is Lauren Artress,
Mhm.
so
That's
I
wonderful.
give her credit in here somewhere.
Yeah, you just.
Because really, this is from her book and some of her material that I put together.
Mm-hmm. Now the next time it's open is Good Friday, I believe.
Good Friday.
And I think it's open all day, or
Oh wow.
Good Friday.
Yeah. 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 I think it's important that people experience it. I really think that's the most important piece. That a few little guidelines, I think,
Mhm.
are helpful when people are walking it for the first
Mhm.
time.
I heard you say it's listed in here as maybe one of those hints, or to if you have a question or you're facing a decision, would you be as sort of blunt as that sometimes to say that
Yeah.
that can be something you can think about as you
Yeah.
walk,
Yeah.
if that is
Or to name that as you walk in, and then
Mhm.
just try and empty
Yeah.
everything out
Yeah.
and be open to what comes.
name it. Okay.
Loretto is what you're thinking of. The
That's it.
Retreat.
Mary, yeah.
Mary Holmes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Will you sleep better?
I hope so.
I think sometimes the
Great.
energy, I sit at the hospital and, for 2.5, 3 hours with it, and people come and go all the time, and I just think, wow, this is amazing. They're actually paying me to do this. Pretty good.
So even if you're not walking the labyrinth yourself, you still